Hey, what's up guys, it's Bakes here and thank you for joining me for this episode of my Top 10 series. Today's list is my top 10 albums that I picked up in the year 2023. A pretty simple top 10 list this time around. It's as simple as it sounds, just some albums that I picked up last year in 2023 that I had on heavy rotation and I wanted to share with you guys. It's as simple as that. I did do a video like this at the end of last year as well, 2022. But this time around, I decided to change up a little bit how I actually put my list together. First of all, last year I included albums from that year, so again 2022, and I kind of regret doing that. Looking back, I feel like that was a dumb decision because if I remember right, majority of my top 10 list was made up of albums from 2022. And at the end of every year anyway, I put together a list of my favorite albums from that year. So it was a little bit repetitive. So this year I'm not including any albums from last year, 2023. They all have to be from years prior or throwback albums, for example. Another thing that I decided to change up for this year's top 10 is last year I based my top 10 on how much I actually enjoy the albums. So I ranked them pretty much on my favorites. This year I'm ranking them on how much they were on heavy rotation. So, it doesn't mean that my number one is an album that I actually like more than my number 10. It's just based off how much I actually had this album on replay through 2023. So they're the two things that I changed up this time around. There are 31 albums that were eligible. So without delaying any longer, let's get into this list, starting off at my number 10. For my number 10, I have the album No Good Left to Give by the band Movements. As I said, this list is based off of how much I had these albums on rotation in 2023, not based off of my favourites, because if it was based off my favourites, this would be much higher. I've said this so many times on my channel as well. This is my favourite Movements album of the three that they've done so far. I just find it to be the most consistent, the most fluid when you're listening to it from start to finish. It just flows so well from one song into the next. It's just really easy listening. But even a handful of songs in more recent times, the past couple of weeks, have still been in my rotation. Santiago Peak, Seneca, Love Took the Last of It, just to highlight a few. But as I said, this album as a whole has definitely been on heavy rotation in 2023. I don't see it fading away anytime soon. But Movements are one of those bands that I don't think have actually put out a bad album, put their whole catalogue of albums lined up, throw a rock and you're going to hit a winner because they're all great. But Movements, definitely a band never falling out of my rotation, but this is one I had going in 2023. So my number 10 goes to No Good Left to Give by Movements. For my number 9, I have the album Adornment by Grayscale. I actually picked up a couple of Grayscale albums in 2023 and both of them actually quite high in my heavy rotations, but for now my number 9, the earlier released of the two being Adornment. It was released back in 2017 and I remember when it came out, I didn't not like the album, but it took a little while to grow on me, maybe a couple of years or so. So that could be a contributing factor to why I picked it up so late, that and also not being able to find a copy. But just really enjoyable pop punk, more so leaning on the pop side of things, but also got a lot of replay value when I first picked it up. Just had it going on rotation constantly, and actually been listening to Grayscale a little bit more again lately. Just a few other bands that I've been sinking my teeth into sort of remind me of Grayscale, so I've been going back and checking out this album again. But if you haven't checked out this band, they've got a lot of enjoyable stuff. So my number 9 goes to Adornment by Grayscale. So my number 8 was a little bit of a surprise album for me in 2023. Here I have Smithereens by Joji. I say a little bit of a surprise because it's not the typical genres or sounds that I normally gravitate to, but I've said this so many times on my channel before. I try not to pigeonhole myself into specific genres because that way you're just going to end up missing out on something that you would otherwise really enjoy. And I feel like that's something a lot of people do, they have this aesthetic or vibe that they're trying to suit, so, they're like, I'm not going to listen to this band or artist, but you can't be afraid to branch out because, as I said, you're otherwise going to be missing out on something that you'll enjoy. And this is something that I really enjoyed. I came across it at a time I felt like I really needed it. I was going through something in particular, and I was a little bit in my feels, and this album really hit the spot and quite honestly had me in a chokehold for a while. As I said, it was definitely high on heavy rotations. I was listening to it going to sleep because it's sort of got this chill, mellow vibe, but the lyrics are quite deep. It's really easy listening. I was listening to it in the early morning drives to work. Yeah, this is an album that just really hit the spot. As I said, had it on quite high rotation, and it's one that I still sometimes listen to every now and then. So my number 8 goes to Smithereens by Joji. So there we go, I told you that I had both albums quite high on heavy rotation. So my number 7 goes to Nella Vita by, again, Grayscale. So this is the second of 2 Grayscale albums that I picked up in 2023. And before I had physical copies of both, I'd think to myself, what album do I actually like more, Adornment or Grayscale? Because they both have points in their favour. Adornment does things better than Nella Vita, and Nella Vita does things better than Adornment. But now that I had both albums and I could have them both on heavy rotation and listen to them through and through, I would give the slight edge to Nella Vita. I feel like it just sort of polishes up the sound a little bit more. It leans even more into the pop side of pop punk, but just so many of the tracks are super infectious. Like, it's impossible to not just smile and sing along to a lot of the songs here. Just so many infectious choruses and grooves. A lot of the songs have like this dance sort of funk element to them as well, which I think give them maybe a little bit more personality. But again, an album that I had on really high rotation, so my number 7 goes to Nella Vita by Grayscale. For my number 6, I have the mixtape mashup from Jay-Z and Linkin Park titled Collision Course. I've spoken about on my channel before, there are a lot of albums that I grew up listening to in my house, but I've never actually had a physical copy in my own collection. So there is a copy of this in the house. I think it's either in my brother or my dad's music collection. So I constantly heard this album growing up and I knew the songs pretty well. But randomly through the year, the mashup of Numb and Encore just got stuck in my head. I have no idea why. Probably because it's just a fucking cool song. And I thought to myself, I should probably actually pick up that album because I knew there were a ton of other cool mashups. And it's one of the best decisions I made all year because this album fucking rocks. First of all, it was really easy to put on heavy rotation because it just flies by. It's only made up of 6 songs, but it just packs so much energy. It's so fucking badass. The balance of the flows from Jay-Z and then into the instrumentals from Linkin Park. It's just so fucking awesome. And this set also comes with a DVD that shows the making of the album, the Linkin Park band and Jay-Z in the studio, putting it together. I thought was really fucking cool and interesting to watch. And then it also has the live set by MTV of them performing it together. I think I watched it twice, the making of and the show. Again, I just had this on really heavy rotation. It's just so fucking cool. Such an awesome mashup album, collaboration album. I don't think there'll ever be a collab as cool as this. I'm just trying to think, but off the top of my head, I'm not sure if there has been one that's even come close to this. Let me know in the comments below if you can think of one. But as I said, just been on really high, heavy rotation through the year. So fucking awesome. Like, none of the songs are skippable. It's just so fucking badass. I love it. So my number 6 is Collision Course. For my number 5 is an album that I actually have brought up a lot on my channel prior, so sorry, I am going to bring it up again. But my number 5 is the album Fandom by the band Waterparks. So we're going to try and make that cover look nice in the light. But this is an album I've been in love with from the very first time I heard it upon its release back in 2019. And Waterparks are one of those bands that is split with a lot of people. And even though I'm a fan of majority of their stuff, and I say majority because there are a couple of albums that I don't think are the best, this is one I've always considered to be my favourite. So when I finally was able to pick it up last year and find a copy of it, damn right it was on heavy rotation. I fucking love this album and I still really do. But yeah, man, heavy rotation from the time I picked it up. Again, I feel like a lot of the songs were relating to something I was going through at the time as well. And just perfectly suited. I could speak about this album all day, but as I said, I have brought up this album a lot on my channel, and I'm trying to keep this video short and sharp because it's a very simple topic. So my number 5 is Fandom by the band Waterparks. Now, coming in at my number 4 is the album Taboo by Denzel Curry. Now, if you said to me at the start of 2023 that this was going to be one of the albums highest on my rotations for the year, I probably wouldn't have believed you, but here we are, and again with a genre that I don't normally gravitate to, though I'm starting to listen to more rap over time and actually have a little bit of rap in my collection. But I'm still not a scholar on the genre or, know the deep depths of rap, and I'm not going to pretend like I do. But for me, Denzel Curry is one of my favourite rappers making music at the moment, and this is my favourite album of his. It came out in 2018, and I've actually been listening to it for the past, maybe 3-4 years, something like that. So, it's not a new album on the radar for me, but definitely one of my favourites, man. Like, I just feel like each of the songs have, like, really cool instrumentals and flow, and I really like Denzel Curry's style. And the main thing that I really like about this album is I feel like each song has its own personality and feel to it. I feel like that's the biggest withdraw from modern rap that at least my friends listen to and everything, people around me. A lot of it's like mumble rap and it all sounds the same, and I like to listen to rap where I can actually tell what they're saying and, the message of the songs and everything. And I feel like, just a lot of the songs here have that personality and style that I really like. And as I said, I'm not a scholar on rap. I'm not going to pretend like I know much about the genre, but this is probably my favourite rap album of the past 10 years at least. Yeah, just really fucking cool. As I said, quite high on my heavy rotation. So my number 4 goes to Taboo by Denzel Curry. Breaking into my top 3, and for my number 3 I have the album Earth is a Black Hole by Teenage Wrist. Now again, this is an album that I've actually spoken about a lot, especially recently, and I don't know what video I brought this up, but this is an album that for a while I really wanted to like, and I kept going back and checking it out, but I just couldn't get into it. Only the past couple of years I actually, came around on the album, and I'm not actually sure why it took me so long. But man, like as soon as it clicked in my head, I just needed to pick up this album, and as soon as I got it, as I said, went straight into my heavy rotations. If you don't know Teenage Wrist, it's like a mixture of like grunge, pop punk, rock. It's just got a little bit of everything, and it's so fucking cool. It's got this like modern twist on grunge as well, so it's not something like 90s grunge or anything. I just really feel like it's a really unique style and feel. As I said, it's an album that I have brought up a lot recently, so again, I'm not going to go into this one with too much detail, but short and sharp, it was in my heavy rotation for last year. So my number 3, Earth is a Black Hole by Teenage Wrist. Coming in at my number 2 is the album Double Dare by Waterparks. Now, this is the second band to feature twice on this list, and if you actually go back to my number 5 spot where I spoke about Fandom, I carefully chose my words because I said I consider Fandom to be my favourite Waterparks album, but since picking up Double Dare, this album really fucking shot up for me. And it's a weird one because it's not like I never liked Double Dare. I actually really like Double Dare. There's lots of videos on my channel where I've spoken about, this being one of my favourite debut albums and things like that. But, when I went back and checked out this album after picking it up and refamiliarized myself with the track list, I was like, fuck, and it had me hooked, it had me in this chokehold, and I had it on constant rotation for like a really long stretch through the year. And now I'm really considering which album do I like more, Double Dare or Fandom. I'd still probably give the slight edge to Fandom, but comparing how much I listened to Fandom or Double Dare through at least 2023, Double Dare takes the cake. I feel like it was like a month straight where it was almost like daily I'd listen to this album in full. As I said, it had me in a chokehold. Really like this album. I pretty much just spilled my guts there, so my number 2 goes to Double Dare by Waterparks. This is not And coming in as my number one, my most replayed album through 2023, again not including albums from 2023, here I have Appeal to Reason by the band Rise Against. Again, like I brought up with Collision Course, this is an album that I grew up listening to just constantly through the house, like way more than Collision Course. Like Collision Course was a very minuscule thing. Rise Against constantly in the car, in the house, just anywhere we went. Both my brother and my dad are huge Rise Against fans. Like, I am nothing compared to how much they love Rise Against. So as I said, this was just an album that was constantly on rotation, along with all their other albums. But this one's always been my favourite Rise Against album. And it's a weird one because I feel like people who are familiar with this album and, you know, grew up with it like myself and know the track list from back to front, know how good this album is, but I still find it to be insanely underrated. Like, this album came out in 2008, and that's what I'm reading here on the back. And if you look at lists of, like, best punk rock albums from the 2000s, I feel like this one doesn't get brought up a lot, but it is so fucking good. There is no bad song on this album. Like, this album is so consistently good. It's so easy to listen to. It just jam-packs so much energy, so many good songs, so great writing. Yeah, as I said, it's just really fucking solid. Like I said, my brother and my dad constantly had all Rise Against albums on rotation, and they were big fans of the band before I sort of got into them. I always thought they were okay, you know, early on. But when I started to pick out, you know, my favourite songs and everything, and then I eventually went into their discography, it like turns out like majority of my favourite songs were off this album anyway, so sort of speaks volumes to how much I really do like Appeal to Reason, so it just factors into why it was so heavy on rotation in 2023, and that's not going to change in the coming years and everything as well. But my number one goes to Appeal to Reason by the band Rise Against. So there we go, guys, through my top 10 list of albums that I picked up in 2023 and had most on rotation through that year. One thing I just wanted to quickly bring up before I do my recap and proper outro and everything, there is no data or facts behind this list, as in, you know, I didn't go to my Spotify and look at, you know, the numbers or anything. You know, I don't even use Spotify that much. You know, I didn't look through my phone and collect numbers and data. Like I said, it's all just based off of how I felt, you know, remembering back, yeah, this album I listened to a lot, and this one, you know, had me in a stranglehold for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever. So it's all just based off of that. So I just quickly wanted to bring that up again, not including albums from 2023. If I was to include albums from 2023, So Much from for Stardust by Fall Out Boy definitely would have been high up there, and One More Time by Blink-182. But yeah, with that being said, let's quickly get into this recap. So my number 10 was No Good Left to Give by Movements. Number 9 was Adornment by Grayscale. Number 8 was Smithereens by Joji. Number 7, Nulla Vita by Grayscale. Number 6, Collision Course, Jay-Z and Linkin Park. Number 5, Fandom, Waterparks. Number 4, Taboo, Denzel Curry. Number 3, Earth is a Black Hole by Teenage Wrist. Number 2, Double Dare, Waterparks. And my number 1 was Appeal to Reason by Rise Against. So there we go. As I said, nothing of that is based off of data or numbers. It's just me thinking back going, yeah, this one really had my number through the year, and I constantly listened to it, and I remember listening to it and really stuck with me and everything. A few of them are albums that I have brought up on my channel before, some of them I haven't, and as I said, it was a very simple list. It was just pretty much a list of just wanting to share my taste in music with you guys and what I had been listening to through the year. So I guess that's what you can put in the comments, guys. Let me know some bands and artists and music that you were listening to last year. They don't need to be albums and artists from last year, you know, it could have just been, you know, some throwback stuff that you were checking out. But let me know in the comments, guys. If you have anything to say about any of these albums, feel free to do the same, and I'll see you for another video soon, guys. Peace.